All right, we're going to start with a horizontal line. This is representing the eye line, or a straight line that the eyes would sit on. And then I'm going to draw the beginning and end of one eye. Okay, and then this is where my scrap piece of paper comes in. So take your piece of scrap paper and you're going to mark where the eye opening, or where the eye ends and begins. And then you're going to line those up side by side, so that we end up with 3 equal sections. So one whole eye will fit in between a pair of eyes. So that's why we want 3 spaces equal distance from each other, because we're going to put one eye in one of them and the other eye in the other. Now what I'm doing here is I'm adding on to this, because if you were to take your face from temple to temple of your face, the temples of your face, 5 eyes could fit side by side all the way from one side of your face to the other, about. Okay, so we're going to draw our eyes in sections 2 and 4, because this is what it would kind of look like on an actual face. All right, I'm going to study the image that I'm looking at, and so I can see from this image, this is a drawing book, it shows me what the eye opening should look like from the tear duct to the corner of the eye. And so I could have made this match exactly, but I came up with my own size for the eye. And so I'm going to study that eye opening from my handout, and you have that as well, and I will link it below in the description for this video of where I got that from. And so I'm just working on creating that shape of the eye opening from the tear duct, the top of the eye and the bottom of the eye, and where it sits on that eye line. How far above the eye line does it go? How far below the eye line does it go? The line I just drew right there, that is indicating the tear duct. Okay. And then if I take the tear duct away, the space that I'm left with is the eye opening. And the eye opening can be divided into 4 equal parts. So I found the middle, and then I divided the left half in half, and then the right half in half, and that's going to give me 4 equal parts, which will then allow me to place the iris. The iris takes up half of the eye opening if we take the tear duct away. The iris is a perfect circle, and so we want to make sure that we show that that circle is going above and below the eye opening. Most people's irises go above the eye opening and below. You cannot see. The bottom of my iris actually sits on the bottom of the eye opening, and you'll see that whenever we draw our more feminine eyes. All right, and I just want you to do your best to follow that handout, the example, to draw everything in the place and the size that you observe. All right, when you get ready to put in the pupil, don't make it too large or too tiny. Okay, make sure you make it a nice size that looks natural, so that you don't have a beady eye or a big open eye. And then don't forget to draw your highlights. I accidentally forgot to draw the highlight, so I've got to go back and erase the edge of my iris and draw in the shape of that highlight. And then there's also a little highlight down at the bottom where some like tears might be kind of collecting, or like the water from your eyes. All right, when you're finished with that eye, then you're going to switch and draw the other eye. You have a couple of things you could do here. You can draw a mirrored image so that it's a direct reflection of the one you've already drawn, or you can keep observing from the handout. It's up to you how symmetrical you want them to look. Our eyes are actually not 100% symmetrical, so just be aware that when you make it perfectly symmetrical, it doesn't always look as natural. But also, whenever if you draw them exactly the way you see them in a photo, it can also look a little off, because we expect it to be the same and symmetrical, exactly 100% symmetrical on both sides. Don't forget about the iris. You're going to put in the tear duct first, cover up the tear duct, and then divide the eye into 4 equal parts to then place your iris. All right, if you are drawing a direct reflection, you've got to be careful because highlights are not reflected. They're not direct oppositely reflected. They're in the same location. So you got to make sure your highlight spots are in the same place, not in opposite places. Otherwise, it's going to look a little weird. Okay, so it looks like my eye opening is not quite the same size. I feel like this one on the left is way smaller. So what I'm going to do here in a second is I'm going to use my scrap piece of paper to measure the eye opening on the right, the length, the height of it, and then compare that with the one on the left and then adjust accordingly. All right, so I can see that the eye opening on the left is slightly lower. Where the top of the iris is drawn, that is where the eye opening should go. So I've got to go back and adjust it just a little bit so that they match a little bit better. Okay, so now I'm not sure how high I need to make the crease of the eye on the other side. So I'm just taking that scrap piece of paper again, measuring the bottom of the iris to where the top of the eye crease is hitting, and then making sure it's the same on the other side, just so that they're kind of similar. All right, now that everything is drawn, I am ready to start shading or creating the actual texture of the iris, which is radiating lines. So these lines, kind of like a pie or a pizza, that appear to radiate from a center point. So make sure they all, like a bicycle tire. So I'm going to use my mechanical pencil to put those in. And then I'm going to use my Q-tip to start blending. All right, when you're ready to start blending with your Q-tip, be sure to stay away from your highlight. We want the highlight spot to stay white. We want that to be the color of the paper. And so you're just gonna be very, very careful and very gentle, and just using a little edge of that Q-tip, blend in your mechanical pencil to your iris. And then I'm gonna use my mechanical pencil to kind of fill in the pupil to make it dark and make it stand out, as it is one of the darker parts of the eye. All right, using my eraser, I'm going to go back and erase out some of these guidelines so they're not so visible. And then I will be ready to start using my dirty Q-tip. So this is the Q-tip I already used. You can see it's dirty. And I'm going to use it to gently fill in the tear duct and the edges of the white of the eye. All right, you can see that I am leaving the area right next to the iris alone. I'm only shading the edges of the white of the eye. All right, now you're ready for your ebony pencil or your 6B shading pencil. The outline of the top of the eye opening is dark because of our eyelashes. The edges of our iris are dark, and then there's usually a little bit of darkness throughout the edges of the iris leading to the pupil. So I'm not coloring and shading the whole entire iris. I'm just selectively making some parts darker. All right, and then you're ready to use your Q-tip again, and you can keep using the dirty part of the Q-tip to blend in a little bit of those ebony pencil lines or those dark shaded marks into the iris. All right, then I'm going to use my ebony pencil or my shading pencil to further define the pupil, as it is the darkest part of the eye. All right, now I'm going to go in and put in the tear duct more clearly, where the tear duct meets the white of the eye. You could do this with your mechanical pencil as well. I just chose to use the ebony because, I don't know, just did. All right, so I put in that little corner of the tear duct and that little line separating the tear duct from the white of the eye, and then using the Q-tip to blend that away. All right, if you have a kneaded eraser, this is when you're going to want to get it out. This is my kneaded eraser. I'm pinching it to a sharp point, and I'm going to use that sharp point to lift out any darkness that got in my highlights, as well as any parts that might have gotten into the white of the eye where I want it to stay white. And I'm also going to use it to go back and lift out some of the iris, because the iris is not all one flat color. Usually because of light, because the eyelashes are protecting most of the eye, the bottom of the iris usually appears lighter. So I'm using that kneading eraser to go back and lift out some of that darkness. All right, now that I'm satisfied with the way my eye is looking, I'm ready to take my dirty Q-tip and start shading the skin area around the eye to make this look more realistic. All right, I see that there are some darker places in the skin, and so I'm very, very gently using that ebony pencil, holding it way in the back of the pencil so I don't have very much pressure on it, just letting the tip of the pencil shade on the paper where I see the darkest places of the skin. Alright, you'll notice from my shading that this circle is starting to show up on my drawing. So that happened because the paper I drew on before, the paper that was on top of this piece of paper, I was pressing too hard and I was drawing circles, obviously. And so it incised into the paper, and as I'm shading the paper, that incision from the paper before is leaving this circle around my drawing. So it's very, very important that you're not always pressing super hard on your paper. Otherwise you end up ruining or messing up a drawing, kind of like this one. Alright, so now I'm using my mechanical pencil to go back and refine some of the lines of the eye, which will be the top of the eye opening, and then I'm also drawing in the eyelashes. So this guy's eyelashes, they go down across the eye opening. And so I just use my mechanical pencil to draw those. For the bottom eyelashes, I'm going to be very gentle and very sporadic and try to put in those lines. And so you're going to want to practice this on a separate piece of paper before you put it in, because it can be very challenging. All right, so this is what I've ended up with so far. And now I'm going to go back and shade the skin around the eye even more. All right, I'm getting pretty satisfied with the way that the skin is looking. So whenever I'm ready to put in my eyebrows, I need to make sure that the skin is shaded underneath the eyebrows. And then I'm going to do little individual lines in the direction that the hairs are growing. And I'm going to use my mechanical or sharp pencil in order to do this. This may take some practice. You might need to practice this somewhere else first before you go and do it on the paper. So I didn't like the way that shape was looking, so I erase it, blend it out with my Q-tip, and then redraw it where I meant for the hairs of the eyebrows to go. All right, and that is step-by-step how to complete one half of a masculine eye. Your assignment will be to have both eyes completed, and then photograph that and get it sent in. And don't forget to ask questions if you have any.